Hello, welcome to the channel. Today I wanted to look back on Gresham's reign as ROH World Champion and figure out what was good, what was bad, and what was weird. It's a reign that happened under peculiar circumstances, and I'm sure people want to know about it. So, let me act as your guide as we go back and discuss each match. Starting with where it all began, Jonathan Gresham versus Jay Lethal at Final Battle 2021, the end of ROH as we know it. Originally this match was scheduled to be Gresham versus Bandido, but Bandido had COVID, so Tony Khan allowed Lethal to compete in his place. Do note, AEW did not own ROH at this time either. These circumstances resulted in what was actually a really good match. The absence of Bandido meant Gresham and Lethal were fighting for the original world belt design rather than the current one. It's a small element that added to the overall tone of the match, going back to the foundation of ROH as it comes to an end. That all plays into the match a bit as well. Lethal was faction mates with Gresham in the foundation, so these two know each other very well, and you see that throughout the match. The best part would be that Gresham relentlessly attacks one of Lethal's arms, which prevents Lethal from hitting the lethal injection, one of his finisher moves. With that mishap, Gresham batters Lethal with many elbow strikes to the head, and then locks in a hold, forcing Lethal to submit. There's a really bittersweet moment there at the end of when the entire roster is standing ringside as both men fight till the end. Overall, the match was easily one of Lethal's best matches in recent times. It had big stakes with the complete unknown surrounding the future of ROH, as well as Lethal being viewed as an outsider coming from AEW and a potential threat to this new future for ROH. I would definitely go and watch this match if you haven't. It's not very long either. I think it's a sub 20-minute match. But ultimately, this match is satisfying as it's a culmination of years of hard work and dedication put into the craft of professional wrestling by Jonathan Gresham. His reign as pure champion, ending but leading into whether he could finally win the big one before the end of ROH. It's just a compelling story that you want to see. In effect, this is Gresham's last chance, and he succeeds. Next, we have a Pure Rules defense against AJ Gray at GCW's Blood on the Hills. This match has a similar structure to the Lethal match, where Lethal's finesse and athleticism was neutralized by his arm being targeted. Gresham targets Gray's leg to neutralize his power. It's very clear that Gray is out of his element in the Pure match. He's focused on his power offense, and it's not an effective strategy as Gresham is able to position him into submissions, usually focused on Gray's legs, forcing him to give up his rope breaks. This match is really fun and quick, and you'll find a lot of strikes and lariats in this match. Gray has a really nice delivery of those moves, compounded with the leg selling. It adds a bit of flair to the strikes that he's throwing, as they're not as full power as a result of the selling. There's a fun strike exchange where Gresham retaliates with strikes to the leg rather than the chest. And near the end, Gray's leg gives out and gives Gresham an opportunity to hit a sequence of forearm strikes, similar to the Lethal match, but ends with Gray flattening him with some big lariats. There's an insane moment when Gresham hits a moonsault on the ropes and maneuvers it into a leg submission, and it's so smooth. It's very impressive. Well, yeah, literally no idea how that was possible to do a moonsault into a leg submission, but here we are. When Gresham injects those moments of creativity, it feels very rewarding, and not like you're watching the same match over and over. Of course, that brings me to the finish of the match, where Gresham locks in the octopus hold and batters Gray in the head until the ref is forced to call it. Gresham rarely, if ever, wins the match the same way. After the match, Gray refuses to shake hands, just like at the start of the match. It's a clear lack of understanding of what the mentality behind Pure Rules is, and part of the reason he lost. It's that underestimation of Gresham and Pure Rules. We have Gresham versus Adam Priest under Pure Rules at New South Pro. Where AJ Gray had a bit more sloppiness due to his power style, this match was much more focused and crisp. Not surprising considering the two competitors in this match, Gresham and Priest. Priest was able to keep up and compete with Gresham's technical style. It's a much more competitive match in that sense. It's less about brute force, and Priest even manages to get Gresham to use the first rope break in the match. Although one could discuss at length the intricacies of how and when to use rope breaks, but for this match, it does seem surprising that Gresham would use a break first. There's also a really cool spot where Gresham has a submission locked in on Priest's leg, and so Priest locks in a headlock on Gresham to force him to release his hold, but Gresham maintains the hold with his foot, and I don't know, man, that's just kind of really cool and creative. Gresham then transitions it into a bow and arrow that Priest quickly reverses into a pin attempt. The latter half of the match moves into somewhat of a more strike-based, focused segment, with both men holding hands and striking back and forth, but at some point that leads Gresham to lock in the octopus hold, to which Priest then wisely falls over into the ropes to break it as fast as possible. That would be an example of a great time to use a rope break. As valuable as breaks are, As soon as you find yourself in a compromised position, it's usually best to break it as fast as possible to mitigate the amount of damage that accumulates on your body. We see Gresham show off his power later with a big suplex on Priest. Then there's a corner chop spot where they both go back and forth trying to chop each other in the chest, but they keep ducking, dodging each other. Some people may think that spot is a bit silly, but I don't know, it worked for me. After that, we get a big suplex off the turnbuckles, and there's a chain of pin combinations that eventually leads to Gresham getting the win. Overall, the match features two insanely talented competitors. I really need to check out Priest's work in 2022 because he worked very well in this match, and I've heard good things. If you enjoy more technical work, you will most likely enjoy this match. My only complaint with this match would be, I feel like some sections drag a bit too much. The lethal match was a similar length and time, but it flowed better than this. Still, the match is definitely worth checking out for some of the crazy technical sequences these guys cook up. Next we got Gresham versus Chris Sabin at Impact's Hard to Kill pay-per-view, under Pure Rules. Similarly to the Priest match, we see a lot of technical prowess. This match feels faster and more intense, probably due to the fact that it's much shorter. There's just a lot to like about this match, whether it be Gresham systematically wearing down Sabin with various joint targeting and manipulation, or the way Sabin can sneak in some big offense. This big offense leads to Gresham being the first one to use a rope break to escape a pin. Then we see some more technical goodness with Gresham just pivoting and transitioning into various holds. This leads to a point where Sabin uses a rope break to find some reprieve. Like most Gresham matches, Gresham locks in the octopus hold and rains down some hammer fists on Sabin, leading to Sabin using his second rope break. There's a really sick cradle shock, but Gresham uses his second rope break to survive that. What this leads into is a strike exchange culminating with a pin combo sequence, with Gresham securing the win. On paper, this match seems quite similar to the structure of the Priest match. The biggest difference would be Sabin was fighting a lot more recklessly, going for major offensive moves similar to AJ Gray, whereas Priest was a lot more conservative and controlling what he was doing. With that in mind, the Sabin match was a lot more rapid pace and intense. Like all the other matches thus far, I'd say this is an easy recommendation. It's short, quick, and got that juicy technical work and some flashier moves if that's your thing. Next up, another Impact match. Gresham is facing Steve Maclin under Pure Rules. This match is short and really creative. This match diverges a lot from what you may want to call Gresham's formula. Maclin, similar to AJ Gray, refuses to shake hands with Gresham, a clear sign of underestimation. This match starts fast with both men being baited into using their first rope breaks. In fact, both men rapidly lose all their breaks throughout the match. Gresham mainly focuses on his technical work in this match, while Maclin hits big offense, targeting Gresham's back. Maclin lands a beautiful butterfly backbreaker at one point on Gresham, and it's just a really cool looking move. As we know, I enjoy butterfly anything. This back targeting prevents Gresham from doing suplexes later on in the match, which causes Gresham to make a mistake like going for a drop kick instead, but that only hurts his back more. There's a lot of fun baiting of each other into different moves throughout this match, like one part where Gresham sticks his foot between Maclin's legs so he can grab him by the arms when Maclin reaches down to grab his foot. Gresham then flips him over and locks in a submission. Another time is when Maclin baits Gresham into the corner to land a big spear on him. Later on, the match becomes really interesting after Gresham starts attacking Maclin's knee. Maclin quickly uses his last rope break as a result. We see Gresham hit running forearms he's so fond of until, like the Gray match, is met with a big old lariat. There's a bit of back and forth until Gresham locks in the figure 4 hold. Some slaps exchange, but Gresham never lets up and eventually uses the ropes for leverage as both men had expended all their breaks. Gresham wins via pinfall as Maclin is too late to lift his shoulders. But overall, the match is pretty good. It's short and the finish is really quite creative. So if that's interesting, you should check it out. It's free on YouTube as well. Now, we're back in GCW. This time, Gresham is facing Too Cold's Scorpio at GCW Say You Will. This match is not under Pure Rules, and I'll be honest with you, I had low expectations coming into this match, but it is pleasantly surprising. Too Cold is a bit more athletic than you would expect, doing a cartwheel and a few flips off the turnbuckles, but this match is really simple. It starts with a test of strength that sort of has Gresham being dominated, forcing him to think smarter on how to gain the advantage. There's a sequence of different pin combinations, some more Gresham using his technical work to pivot and move around Too Cold in his offense. Then basically the match settles into a gear with a lengthy strike exchange. Gresham sells the strikes like death to keep the match engaging. You see Gresham get frustrated as a result, which adds a nice dynamic to the match. We get a forearm exchange with Gresham selling like death again. We get a cool German suplex from Gresham. Before Gresham can go for another move, Too Cold stops him with a kick, followed by a combo of kicks that Gresham dodges. And it's just kind of cool to see Too Cold move like that with those kicks. This lets Gresham land another German suplex after he dodges the moves. The match winds down when Too Cold goes for an inverted suplex that Gresham avoids by clambering to the back of Too Cold, but Too Cold breaks it up by just launching himself into the corner like a cannonball. It's visually very pleasing to see that. It's a nice creative way for for someone to escape that hold. When Too Cold gets cocky and starts taunting, Gresham locks in a sleeper hold that puts Too Cold to sleep, letting Gresham secure another win. Overall, this match is honestly not too bad. I actually quite like it. It's not overly complex and gives us a glimpse of what Too Cold used to be like. The usual Gresham good stuff is here with the superb positioning and technical work. The strike exchange is made fun with the selling and the frustration dynamic, and the match is pretty short, so probably wouldn't go out of my way to see this, but it's not a bad match if you want to. Next up, Jonathan Gresham versus Josh Alexander at the first Terminus event. Terminus is the pseudo promotion that Gresham runs. It's had 3 events thus far, I believe. Anyway, this match is under pure rules. This match is just kind of weird. The whole vibe of it is off. It's not particularly bad or anything. There's of course some good technical work from both men to keep some level of engagement, but I'm not sure exactly. The match just feels a bit hollow. Perhaps I've watched it too many times at this point, but basically the match is Gresham and Alexander going back and forth with holds. Gresham expends 2 rope breaks before Josh uses 1. That's a dynamic different from the previous pure matches. Gresham also acts extra cocky in this match too, like one part where he taunts Alexander about not being strong enough to lift him off the ground, only for Alexander to retaliate as a result. Alexander uses a close fist early in the match and goes to do another later on, but hesitates, giving Gresham an opportunity. That's interesting, I suppose. Gresham targets his leg throughout the match too, which comes into play later in the match when Alexander is unable to hit a move, leaving him vulnerable to an attack by Gresham. Later, Alexander baits him again by pretending that his leg is hurt. It's a cool idea. There's a strike exchange, Gresham ends up expending all his rope breaks, and during a submission he can't break out as a result, and has to creatively find a way to escape by using the ropes. There's really not too much else to say about this match. The match ends with a big suplex and a double pin. The finish is probably a big turnoff for most people, but I thought it was fine. Having a draw without going to a time limit really limits one's options on a satisfying ending. I think the pacing in this match could be better, especially if they were going to do a double pin. I'm not entirely sure I would recommend people watch this match. It's more bland than bad to me. Maybe someone loves this match, but it ain't me. Now we go across the pond to find Gresham fighting Chris Ridgeway in Progress under pure rules. This match, despite being longer, is a much more enjoyable experience than the previous match. Even though this match also has an emphasis on technical wrestling, it flows much better. Some of that has to do with the creativity from both men, with very slick and clean transitions between holds. There's a really cool section where Gresham is in a hold and does a rotation and sort of flips and rolls over Ridgeway, who then locks in his own hold, only for it to shortly be reversed into a different hold. That happens a lot in this match. It works really well to keep the pacing from dragging. Gresham ends up burning through all his rope breaks during the match, and leads to a similar predicament as the Alexander match, but this time, his escape via the ropes is halted. Ridgeway flips the script and uses Gresham's positioning to set up a massive German suplex, followed by a running knee. Lots of fun, creative stuff like that in this match. It also helps that Ridgeway is freakishly flexible and can be put into some really disgusting looking holds. It's also very interesting to see how evenly split the crowd is during this match, especially at the start. There's like a dueling chant for like a good 5 minutes. I'm serious, it's crazy. You see some of Gresham's highlights, like him doing a moonsault followed by stomping someone's arm and running it through into a pin combination. I haven't mentioned it, but he's done that in pretty much every match before this and after this match. There's a strike exchange because of course there is. Ultimately the match ends with Gresham landing some big forearms, but Ridgeway tries to fight back a bit, but eventually succumbs. I feel like Ridgeway looks a lot better here than Alexander did in the last match. Even though Ridgeway straight up lost, it felt more even. But honestly, you're going to see a trend here. Gresham's better matches are with the lower profile guys, the guys who can take the loss, because the finishes can be a lot more decisive and satisfying. Overall, I would definitely check this out. They actually had a match before at Wrestle Carnival, that's free on YouTube, and some people preferred that one, but I like this one better, mainly for the pacing and creativity. Back across the pond, and back home, we find Gresham and Defy facing CODY CHHUN in a bog standard title match, so not pure. This is another really enjoyable defense. The main dynamic here is whether or not CHHUN can keep up with Gresham, so it's a lot of sequences of Gresham locking in a hold and CHHUN pivoting his way out to gain control, usually frustrating Gresham in the process. Then Gresham will find some insane way to gain control again, and it's just a back and forth that goes on for a good chunk of the match. You also have Gresham throughout the match having a little accidents, like hitting CHHUN in the face when they are being broken up in the corner by the ref, or Gresham getting his leg stuck in a hold on CHHUN. At first, CHHUN shrugs it off and shakes hands with Gresham, presuming the best. But later, as it continues to happen, CHHUN gets fed up and retaliates. Gresham does the baiting strength spot again. I think he did it in the Josh Alexander match. He does it again here. I guess I like it. It's fine. It happens a lot, I'm going to be honest with you. Usually that spot just leads into some crisp sequence by Gresham flinging around the other person. There's a taunt that Gresham does where he has a person in a hold and will start a clap chant with the person's he has a hold in. So either their hand, like if he has like an arm lock in, he'll start a clap chant by clapping his hand on their hand, or he's done it with someone's foot as well. It's a nice comeuppance when CHHUN does that spot back to him. Throughout the match, both men's arms get targeted a bit, so there's moments when when that comes into play as well. Like when both go to do a shoulder tackle and hurt their arms and they can't capitalize. Something similar happens again when they both go for an arm drag. It's just nice to see some selling come into the story like that. We see that corner chop spot again from the Adam Priest match. It plays out differently this time with Gresham getting the upper hand, and then the match winds down with them trading strikes and a quick back and forth pin sequence because of course, with Gresham eventually getting the win. This is a really solid match. It's paced really well, and the dynamic between CHUN and Gresham keeps this match fresh with nothing overstaying its welcome. Check out this match if you can. What's next for Gresham? Whom shall he face? It is Nick Aldis in Memphis Wrestling and not a Pure Rules match. I'll be honest with you, I remember not enjoying this match in my first viewing, but on rewatch, it's okay. It's fine. The most interesting aspect of the match is the size disparity between Gresham and Aldis. Gresham is constantly working from underneath, and it's just kind of sneaking around and surviving. Gresham sells the big power moves pretty satisfyingly with the main focus on the damage to Gresham's back. There's a spot where Gresham loses grip on a foothold from the Priest match, remember that? Always enjoy that spot. Gresham hits a sick moonsault off the ropes into a leg lock. He's done that before, I just realized. It's also cool still. But mainly this match is just Gresham finding ways to neutralize Aldis's power, so he targets his leg for a good chunk of the match. There's a really cool German suplex by Gresham where it's a transition out of a hold on Aldis's leg. There's some of that Gresham creativity in this match, and the way he moves around Aldis and is able to lock in holds on the bigger man. But really this match is kinda in the same vein as the Alexander match. It's also 20 minutes, which is too long for this type of match. Plus the finish is really bad. Really bad. Aldis is gonna do a move, but is distracted by a video message from Matt Cardona. And somehow that lets Gresham lock in a figure 4 and get the pin because Aldis forgets to lift his shoulders. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't get that. Like, I get maybe he's been weak yet. I don't know. It didn't fit the story. It didn't fit the tone. It was weird. Anyways, this is definitely skippable, but it is free on YouTube if you're a sicko and you want to watch it. Go ahead. It's there. It's free. Next, we are back in progress. This time, Gresham is facing Dean ALLMARK in a Pure Rules match. Thank goodness. This match is real short, so that's already good going in. There's a real mutual respect between both competitors that's demonstrated throughout the match. Each man going hold for hold, move for move. They even shake hands midway through the match because they're so respectful of each other. So yeah, really this match is it just has a typical Gresham fanfare, a little bit sped up, a little bit more condensed, lots of technical work. Gresham has a cool headlock escape where he escapes by doing a cartwheel. Actually something Too Cold did to him in his match. Nice little connection, I suppose. Not sure if it was an intended reference or not, but it is neat. Nonetheless, early in the match, Gresham forces Dean to use a rope break by tripping him into the ropes, but let's be clear, it's not perceived as heelish, just more like friendly banter. Dean even does it back to him shortly after. We see the classic bow and arrow hold that Gresham loves, being immediately reversed, like it always is, into a pin by Dean. He also does that leg hold spot where he maintains control of the foot, and he actually isn't immediately reversed after doing that, so that was cool to see. There's some back and forth technical work before a rolling pin combination sequence that we've seen before. Neither man are able to win with that, but the match just ends with Gresham feinting a hurt leg as Dean hits the ropes. Dean goes for a sunset flip, but Gresham just sits down mid-move and gets the pin. It's a neat, little satisfying way to rapidly end the match. Just some clever thinking displayed by Gresham. Just overall the match is short and enjoyable. Not an essential viewing, but still fun. Gresham is facing Santana in his second Terminus event under Pure Rules. This match is really frustrating because it is actually quite good, lots of interesting ideas, but the botched finish undercuts everything really good about the match, and that's really unfortunate. What works really well in this match is the power dynamic between Gresham and Santana. Santana wants to make the match a brawl on the outside, constantly trying to fling Gresham to the outside, but Gresham continues to weasel his way back in the ring at every turn to keep the match in his control since the ring is where he does his best work. We also see Gresham acting really cocky inside the ring, continually offering his wrist to Santana to make him look like a fool when Gresham is able to reverse out of whatever Santana tries to do with the wrist. But when Santana eventually succeeds with a big boot to knock Gresham off the apron into the outside, he follows it up with a dive, and it becomes a brawl on the outside. This is much more favorable to Santana. Gresham is flung into chairs twice and wailed on by Santana repeatedly, but Gresham is able to find some reprieve back in the ring and regain control. He does the spot where he has the person's hand and starts the clap chant, then he continues to target his opponent's arm by just dragging it around the venue, forcibly pulling Santana through the ropes to the outside. It's simple, but it looks extra vicious. The spot concludes with Santana using a rope break, one and only one used in this entire match. Quite the contrast to other Gresham Pure Rules defenses that had a lot more emphasis on rope break usage. Santana, wanting to brawl, lets out a closed fist punch, which earns him a warning. Doesn't lead to anything. We see Gresham do a cool lucha sequence, since that's another style he's versatile in. Basically, he does a moonsault and then a tope. The match wraps up with a forearm exchange and a pin combination sequence. Santana flattens Gresham with a sick rolling lariat, and then the most awkward finish occurs in wrestling history. After a bit of back and forth, Gresham has a pin secured and the ref just doesn't count to 3 for some reason. So Santana kicks out awkwardly. Both men are now gassed after that, so they do just a little pin combination again, and Gresham gets the 3, but it's so flat, it's so rough, it's just a deflating moment where everything should have been crescendoing in that moment. So would I recommend this match? I'm not sure, quite frankly. It's paced well, the dynamic is interesting, but the finish is bad, so I'm gonna say it's up to you if you want to see it or not. So where do we find our hero next? In Body Slam, a Danish promotion, Gresham is fighting EMERITUS, not under Pure Rules. Essentially, at the beginning of this match, Gresham works the arm of EMERITUS for a long time. EMERITUS is constantly trying to find a way free, but Gresham always ends up in control. We even see the clap spot that Gresham is fond of. EMERITUS does a good job selling the hurt arm for most of the match, making sure to emphasize the difficulty of certain moves that require an arm. Later he goes for a lariat with the bad arm, but it's not effective, as it hurts him more than Gresham. EMERITUS does eventually gain some more agency in the match when he works a headlock on Gresham for a lot of the match. To be clear, Gresham was working his arm, and he was working Gresham's head and neck. Mid-match, they end up doing a suplex out of the ring. It's a fun, cool spot. It's a classic. They get back in the ring, exchange some forearms. Gresham targets the bad arm for good measure. They do some chops because, of course, EMERITUS lands a big knee on Gresham and then does a really cool sequence, ending with some sort of pile driver. There's a pin attempt there, but Gresham's leg is under the ropes, nullifying the 3 count. Match winds down with a rapid sequence of pin combos that ultimately fail. Gresham locks in the octopus hold with extra emphasis on the weakened arm, and then just wails on EMERITUS with hammer fists till he taps out. It should be noted Gresham works quite heelish here. The crowd is really quite hostile to him, which makes sense because EMERITUS is the promotion's babyface. Overall, this match is enjoyable. I think it could be a bit shorter, but doesn't really feel too long either. The different segments are paced quite well, and the through line of EMERITUS's hurt arm, it makes for quite a compelling experience to stay engaged with. We are still in Europe, and this time Gresham is fighting Fabio in FFPW under Pure Rules. Lots of good stuff in this match. Gresham is once again acting as the heel of this match with the hometown crowd firmly behind Fabio. There's a lot of back and forth technical work we love to see. Fabio does really well to keep up with it. Early on, Gresham does his sneaky tactic of tripping Fabio into the ropes, with Fabio finding revenge quickly and doing the same back to Gresham. Fabio's arm is targeted by Gresham throughout the match. Gresham is constantly doing forearms and holds, constantly finding a way to weaken it. Fabio does a great job selling the damage and has to rely mostly on his legs for offense, and even begins to retaliate by targeting Gresham's leg. Fabio locks in a leg lock, and Gresham burns through a second rope break as a result. Gresham tries to do the clap spot twice, but none of the crowd are having it, which is kind of funny to see. We see some vintage Gresham maneuvers like running through the arm into a pin combination. Usually he'll do a moonsault, stomp the arm, run the arm through. He'll do something like that. There's quite a bit of back and forth on the pins, and the sequence ends with Gresham bridging very forcibly and low-key smashing his head into Fabio's face briefly, but Fabio seems okay from that. Gresham burns through his last rope break after a pin attempt. Fabio quickly follows up with another leg lock that Gresham can't escape as he's out of rope breaks, and so Gresham has to get creative again, and he rolls both himself and Fabio out of the ring onto the floor. Another very creative escape from Gresham. Later the two trade blows, targeting each other's weak limbs, arm and leg respectively. Fabio lands some big offensive moves that honestly feel like he might win with. Plus he's still selling the arm damage, which is nice. We get some more forearms before the match is wrapped up, with Gresham delivering like 3 to 4 German suplexes on Fabio and locking in the sleeper hold for the win. Overall, this is a really good defense, probably the best one that's overseas. Fabio is an easily likable guy to get behind. The selling is believable, and he adds a more creative dimension to the match. Paced well, just tightly packaged Gresham goodness we love to see. Easy recommendation and free on YouTube. This match also marks the end of Pure Rules defenses from Gresham. Still overseas, our journey continues as Gresham visits Progress once more, facing off against CARA Noir for all the gold. CARA Noir holds the Progress World title. Whoever wins will get both gold. This is a non-Pure Rules match. This match is similar to the Santana match, in that it's really good, but also really frustrating because of the finish. Besides that, the match is structured quite well until the ending bit. There's a real big match feel to it since there's a lot at stake. Gresham is still acting quite cocky early on, but CARA Noir is quick to enlighten him that it's a mistake to underestimate him. CARA Noir is freakishly athletic, and that really adds to this match. His speed and agility are quite comparable to Gresham's. Gresham attacks the arm, as is the tried and true method of late. CARA NOIR does a pretty good job of selling. It doesn't feel quite as focal as it did in the FABIO match, but CARA goes for a sleeper hold later in the match and does a cool thing where he locks it in with his teeth since the one arm is damaged. We see the classics like Gresham doing the clap spot and the crowd gets behind it. There's another bow and arrow fail. That move has only worked once. After the corner to corner chop spot that Gresham does, there's a part where CARA NOIR lands a massive German suplex that Gresham no-sells, but is immediately super kicked into place for doing so. It's a nice spin on the no-sell spot. Not a wholly original idea, but it's executed well. Lots of back and forth throughout the match. Later we see some vintage Gresham running through the arm into a sleeper rather than a pin combination. We see our reliable friend the octopus hold that CARA has to break free from by falling into the ropes. We see our trusty forearm moment where they exchange forearms. CARA NOIR lands a massive powerbomb backbreaker. It's just a really cool thing to see. I'm a fan of a backbreaker, so a powerbomb combo is sick. But things take a turn when there's a distraction from an old foe from CARA, which is lame. We hate distractions here. It's followed by some cool stuff from Gresham, hitting a moonsault and a tope, to which CARA follows up with his own tope. Gresham comes back on fire and saves a botch off the ropes into a fairly clean pin combination. We see CARA NOIR's filthy drop kicks, plus a pile driver into a pin. That's broken up by Spike, the guy who's been interfering. Lame. We get some more back and forth pins, the one-arm sleeper spot that I mentioned earlier. Spike comes back for further distraction, and Gresham wins via low blow. Wow, cool. Really, this match has some really compelling bits, but the ending is so bad. So bad to me. CARA NOIR is this unstoppable champion in progress, and to have him lose the belt in such a way that's so deflating. Sure, I got Gresham heat with the audience, but like, it's not a satisfying end. And it's really just kind of weird for Gresham to do it, considering his character is built around honor and purifying wrestling. And sure, Gresham has been working heelish in other promotions in Europe, but like, it's never felt so overt. I don't know, it's just really bizarre. If you wanted to protect CARA NOIR, maybe don't book this match, or don't make it for double gold. I'm sure there must have been a more satisfying solution than this, but it's what we got. You may be wondering, how is Gresham's reign as Progress Champion, you may ask? Really not that good. He had 2 defenses, they're fine, not worth seeking out. Just more heel Gresham if you're some sicko who wants to see that. And then he loses the belt in a weirdly stipulated non-title match. Let me make that clear, it's a non-title match. Basically, these people that were helping him cheat, there's like a stipulation that if Gresham is disqualified, he'll lose the belt. And so Gresham's like, alright, guys, don't cheat here, I need to win this legitimately. They interfere and cost Gresham the match and thus the belt. So yeah, real cool. Very, very satisfying. That said, here we are. We're at a landmark match in the chronicles of Gresham's title reign. We're at ROH Supercard. Under new management with Tony Khan, Gresham is facing Bandido to unify the ROH World titles. It's not a pure match. This match was thrilling to see live. I had no certainty on how things were going to play out. Was Bandido going to be Tony Khan's new pet project? Would he give Gresham a chance with the belt? Just so many unknowns for me. Bandido even had a heel manager for this match to make me think maybe Gresham will be screwed out of being champion. But no, nothing like that happened, thankfully. And the match instead is really quite good, to be honest. Sure, the interference spots are unnecessary, but it's not overtly disruptive to the match at hand. Instead, we get the match that is start to finish chock full of well-structured and paced sequences of quite honestly really impressive work. The match starts with a lengthy back and forth lockup, but there's a lot of creative moments spruced in by Gresham to keep it engaging. We also see the return of the strength spot. We get an homage to Muto as well, so that's always a plus in my book. Gresham escapes a surfboard hold by sitting down, which is something I'd never seen before. Gresham targets Bandido's arm. A bit at the start doesn't really come into play much, but it's there. Bandido does a full minute stalling suplex to keep the crowd focused. We see the return of the corner-to-corner chop spot, but it actually leads into the most impressive sequence I've ever seen. After Gresham lands a massive lariat that leads into 3 consecutive German suplexes, it's just an insane feat of strength and stamina, followed by some hammer fists into a pin position that transitions into a crossface hold that then transitions into a octopus hold, with a bit more hammer fist splashed in. Bandido only survives this by falling into the ropes. Later, Gresham goes for a dive, but Chavo, who is acting as Bandido's manager for this match, saves Bandido, which is kinda lame, but Bandido is upset by this too, so I don't know, it's okay I guess. We get some forearms and a lot of back and forth stuff going on, but before there's a referee down spot, and Chavo throws the belt into Gresham's face. And this was terrifying for me at the time, because I thought, so help me if Bandido wins like this. But rather than capitalize, Bandido has Chavo thrown out of the match, so this allows time for Gresham to recover, and we see some vintage Gresham spots. Bandido stops his momentum with a pop-up cutter that's just pretty sick, I must say. Gresham counters the 21 plex by flipping through it. Then Bandido goes sicko mode, just doing stuff I can't even describe with words, into another 21 plex. My heart stopped here, and I thought this was it for Gresham. Thankfully, he kicked out. Gresham is then super kicked to a standing position, and so then Gresham reverses momentum and lands some big offense that leads into a pin combination for the win. Overall, there's a lot to like here about this match. Some of these sequences, man, they are highly engaging with how detailed they are into moving from spot to spot. Nothing ever feels slow, and the interference angle works enough for me, since I guess it's like Bandido choosing honor over winning, which is cool. I would say this is a must-watch for any Gresham heads out there. In the post-match, Lethal comes out, so does Samoa Joe, some other people, and Gresham is salty at Lethal because he used a low blow to win his match against Lee Moriarty, as if Gresham didn't just do the same thing in the CARA NOIR match, but I doubt anyone noticed that. With the Bandido match, into the era of a traveling champion. From here on out, Gresham's defenses are in the AEW ecosystem. Here we have another match for Gresham in the Battle of the Belts 2, and he's defending against fellow ROH survivor Dalton Castle in a non-pure match. This match is really fun, it's short, the era of 15-minute plus Gresham title match defenses are over, and we get to see a good showcase of Castle's power, doing multiple gut wrenches repeatedly to Gresham. There's a lot of powerful and quick athleticism from both men throughout the match. Castle does a sick back elbow and into a lariat on Gresham. It's just very crisp and clean. A good chunk of technical work is in this match to show off Castle's abilities as an amateur wrestler. There's some vintage Gresham spots in here, like the running the leg through and pin combination, as well as the clap chant. At some point, they spill to the outside, and Castle does a really cool hurricanrana off the apron onto Gresham. Just really cool, innovative, I like that. There's a corner chop spot we know and love. This is the one where they duck continuously and dodges, and Gresham actually wins this one. You see some more power offense from Castle before we roll into a rolling pin sequence. Those are fun, I guess. The match winds down with Gresham firing up, and then getting neutered by a lariat from Castle, but ultimately is able to position Castle into a octopus hold for the win. Short, quick, very watchable and enjoyable. Easy recommendation. Not super high stakes, but fun nonetheless. Here we are still in AEW. Gresham is fighting Lee Moriarty after betraying him a few nights before in a tag match. This is a non-pure rules. This match is okay. It's fine. The biggest thing going for this match is how unlike it is from other Gresham matches. Gresham is working as a heel here. It is quite different from his heel work overseas. He doesn't really do any vintage Gresham stuff like running the leg through or have a forearm moment, stuff like that. Lee brings a nice fire at the start of the match that keeps the match flowing until Gresham sack whacks him while the ref is distracted. Lee Moriarty sells the groin damage pretty believably. Things just look a bit more strained and a bit more difficult to do than they should be. We do see some neat technical wrestling from both men. Lee having to keep up despite the groin pain is an interesting dynamic. Gresham targets an arm, causing Lee Moriarty to be further off balance when trying to withstand attacks from Gresham. Gresham pushes Lee off the turnbuckle. It just feels extra mean coming from Gresham, who was all about honor. Gresham sells a really clean dropkick from Lee, but ultimately Lee Moriarty succumbs to Gresham after the good old octopus hold and hammer fist combination. Overall, a solid match with an interesting look at what Gresham as a heel is like, which is fine. I feel like a heel Gresham should just bully a person with more holds and more submissions and be extra cocky. So basically just him as a face, but like turned up 10 times. The traditional heel stuff from Gresham just falls a bit flat for me, especially when I don't really know what the character motivation is. Maybe I missed it in the AEW programming, but I doubt it. Overseas, the heel stuff works better because it's like he's in a hostile environment as an outsider. Now for our last match, our last stop in the journey of looking at every ROH World title defense by Jonathan Gresham. His opponent is Claudio Castagnoli at Death Before Dishonor, an ROH event, not under pure rules. This was weird to watch back because at the time of viewing, I had never felt so frustrated with a match, and I still am to a degree, really. And obviously there's a bunch of behind the scenes stuff that I don't want to get into, but mostly when I look at this match, it's kind of looking at it in a vacuum. And when you do that, it's kind of a good match where we see Claudio dominate the majority of the match before getting the pin. The size dynamic too is extra apparent in this match, with Claudio being a towering figure over Gresham. So it makes sense. Gresham would target his leg throughout the match with submissions and even some chops. The hurt leg would even prevent Claudio from hitting powerful moves later on. That's a cool aspect to this match. Plus it's great fun seeing Claudio do freakishly strong stuff like gut-wrenching Gresham off the ropes, or doing a massive backbreaker, or even just seeing the man do an uppercut is fun. Claudio also, to escape a hold that Gresham has locked in, does a double foot stomp on Gresham that looks extra vicious, probably due to the size disparity. Early on in the match, Gresham does his strength spot. The Muto spot is back as well. I'm not sure I like that strength spot, or maybe I've seen it too many times at this point. It just kind of usually stalls the flow of the match, but I suppose that's the objective of the move, since usually it's a way for Gresham to reset the momentum in a match in his favor. That That's another thing about this match. Usually when we see a Gresham match, it's him. He's usually the dominating force in the match, even when he's working from underneath. But this match is pretty much all Claudio. I mean, don't get me wrong, Gresham sneaks in some good offense. One part I did particularly like is when Gresham and Claudio were in a leg lock, figure 4, I think, and Gresham is just doing anything to survive, so he starts grabbing and ripping at Claudio's ear to make him release the hold. I like the little details like that. Later on in the match, Gresham lands a massive German suplex on Claudio. It's just really awesome to see Gresham do that on a size of someone like Claudio. This sort of leads into a forearm moment where they exchange forearms from Gresham, but is stopped by an uppercut and followed up by a Ricola bomb for the 3 count, thus marking the end of Gresham's reign as ROH World Champion. This match is paced well, it's quick, there's a lot to like, but there's a lot of weird things surrounding this match, like Gresham doesn't act heel at all anymore, which is probably a result of what happened behind the scenes, but still kind of weird how it's just dropped. There's like 0 build for this match, and it was rushed at the start of the pay-per-view. Lots of things making this match feel like I'm watching an execution rather than a great triumph by our hero, Claudio. But oh well, what can you do? At least Gresham didn't lose to Jericho. So what was this all for? What did we learn? I think this is really interesting to look at. What weird circumstances gave us a really interesting reign? What was more frustrating was after Tony Khan bought ROH, the whole purifying wrestling story was dropped, so we never really got any more pure matches. After the purchase, the number of defenses just completely dropped, which would be fine if you ran longer term stories, but they didn't, so it's like, what are you doing? Like, Gresham went from defending the belt a few times a month to having 2 months of no defenses. Just weird, but overall the reign had a lot of good, some bad, and some weird. Here's a recap of the matches I'd recommend. The Jay Lethal match, the AJ Gray match, the Adam Priest match, the SABIN match, the MACLIN match. I would pass on the Too Cold Scorpio match. I would pass on the Alexander match. Ridgeway is good, but it's long. Same with the CODY match. ALDIS, I would skip that match. Dean ALLMARK is good, but passable. SANTANA, because of the finish, I would skip it. EMERITUS, I would skip it as well. It's good, but it's, I don't know, it's fine. FABIO match, I would definitely watch. CARA NOIR match, skip because of the bad finish. I would watch the BANDIDO match. The Dalton Castle match, it's short and sweet. Moriarty, I would pass unless you're interested in seeing a heel Gresham, and the Claudio match because it's the last match in Gresham's reign. Other matches I'd recommend from Gresham's 2022 was the match with Erie at WXW's 16 karat gold event. He had a good match with Blake Christian and GCW. I haven't watched it back, but it was good, I'm pretty sure. Long, but good. He had a match with Kevin Blackwood and C4 that I would definitely recommend. It's very good. He had another match with him in PWG, but it's trash. Don't watch that one. Gresham also had a really good match with Takeshita at Terminus 3. I would definitely seek that out. I didn't really see much of Gresham's work after the Claudio match. Looking at his cage match, I see there's some interesting matchups, so I might take a look at some of those later, but who knows. How would Gresham stack up in the year-end list? After watching all these back, I realized there's nothing really spectacular about any of the matches that give it that match of the year contender quality. Not that these matches are bad by any means, but it's missing something. Maybe it's the build of a good story. The closest I would say was the Bandido match, because I mean, just the work in there is very impressive, but I think at best it would be an honorable mention, but it's still missing something. I'm not sure. Maybe if it was a pure rules match, it would put it in an upper echelon, because something about Gresham in a pure rules match just has something special to it. Gresham as a pure champion, like when he was not the world champion, but a pure champion. It was something so special about that reign. The pure rules matches gave him that extra edge to make wins more believable on bigger opponents, because Gresham knew the rule set so well. He was so experienced in that match type, and they made the matches so captivating, so exciting and intense. I'm not sure how Gresham will fare in the years to come. Hopefully he finds a good spot in Impact, but who knows. I wish him luck. With that all said, thanks for watching till the end of the video. This was a long one. My links to my Twitter and Ko-Fi are in the description. Thanks so much for watching again, and I'll see you in the next one.